This video is for Air Force One, the first on our practice star. Something interesting about this article is that it switches through organizational strategies. So sometimes when you read an expository text, you have one text structure, but sometimes you have different. So this starts with description. The first thing our author tells us is, what is the Air Force One? He gives us a very broad definition and then tells us a little bit more information about what it looks like and what the Air Force One does. And we learn that this is how the president travels. And then we get a lot of description about the accommodations it has, that the president has a full suite with a dressing room and a bathroom, and that a lot of people, his large entourage, that could have been a word that you might have up, an entourage as a group of people that travel with him, lots of room for them as well, and there's places for them to both work and rest, and food prep stations. So you start to get, it's almost like we're using imagery here, right? You start to get this plane looks like outside and inside. And then we have a nice diagram about all of the different pieces of the plane. Conference room, medical office, president's suite, and the kitchen. And then this last paragraph in that same section, before we learn about all the awesome things like, oh, there's a kitchen and bathroom, but then it can also do really cool things like refuel while it's still in flight, and it can serve as a mobile command center and a national emergency, which is useful. So then we switch to chronological order and we learn the history of the Air Force One. So the Flying Presidents tells us, paragraph, that first we had people traveling by horse and by train, then by ship. So much like all people in those times, there was an evolution of travel. So the presidents followed that same timeline. And then we started to learn about, okay, who were the first people to actually ride on? So we started with FDR and how the names changed throughout time. Sacred Cow to Independence to Columbine 2 and 3. And then we go all the way up to 1963 with Lyndon B. Johnson. So this is just a quick overview of how the plane changed in name and in appearance, what presidents flew aboard it at those important times. So that was a chronological piece. Then we had a little bit of a comparison piece, and this was personally my favorite part of the article. I thought it was interesting to learn about how different presidents were on the Air Force One. So they titled this section Revealing Character. So how the one revealed who the presidents were as people. So it was different people, right? Some people relaxed. So we had, who was in this section? Let me go back and reread. Ford, Reagan, and Clinton said that a lot of them were able to relax than when they were at the White House, which is interesting. You wouldn't, but for whatever reason, I think because they were close together, one of them said, they kind of let loose a little bit. But then you had people like Nixon and Reagan, and they liked to be alone. And then you had people like Bill Clinton, who, this was kind of his personality anyways, he liked to get on there and play cards. But then we end with this thought about, whatever they do, whatever the accommodations, the Air Force One gives the president an opportunity to work while traveling. And then there is a picture of Obama on the Air Force. We get more of a visual, like an actual photograph of what a typical room or area of the Air Force One looks like. So looking at this all overboard, we know that we learned Air Force One, but we learned a lot of different things. We learned what it looked like. We learned the functions of it. We learned the history of it. And then we learned a little bit about how it affected different presidents while they were on board.